Matt Ferrell, thanks for coming on so much.
Thank you, Ann.
To talk about Disneyland. And before we get to the book, 30 Days in the Kingdom, and that sort of is, should tell you what's going on there, but we'll wait to do that. Give me a little bit of background about you. You're an actor, you've been on a cruise ship, and you are a dresser for the Rockettes for the Christmas Spectacular. Just give me a little bit about what that means.
Well, I grew up a military brat in the Air Force, and I think that has a lot to do with it because you always get to recreate yourself.
You're moving and moving and
moving, and sometimes you're this kid, and sometimes you want to be that kid, and so for me, I just landed in all that stuff, kind of how I survive in New York. You know, the Radio City gig I have done. This will be my 7th year doing that. And it was just a way for me to, be my bread and butter, really, in the city.
Outside of acting and everything else.
Outside of acting and everything else.
Give me one little story about what it's like to be backstage, being a dresser for the Rockettes during the Christmas stuff that goes on there, because they are changing wardrobe all the time.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing. Not only are you sharing, I mean, you just wouldn't imagine, because it's actually, for such a huge space that's, 6,000 people, the backstage area is pretty cramped, but it's really a well-oiled machine. But you've got, people are changing everywhere for some of these numbers, because there's 40 Rockettes, 20 ensemble, little people, Santa, animals, camels. So there's, you come down a hallway and there's people changing, and then there's a little quick change booth, and next to them are the camels, and then you come down. I mean, it's just everybody is there, and it's a big family. It really is. And so for Christmas, if you're not going to be home with your real family, it's been great for me, and I genuinely love working there. It's wonderful to cross the stage. We have, of course, tons of celebrities come and see the Christmas show every year, and everybody just loves the energy there. It's just an amazing space.
So over the course of 7 years that you've been doing this and acting and being on cruise ships and growing up, moving around a lot, when did something in your head say, I need to write about Disneyland? This is not Disney World, this is Disneyland.
This is Disneyland, and
I'd
never been to Disneyland.
Okay, so as we're dressing the Rockettes or whatever it is you're doing, how does 30 Days in the Kingdom saying, I'm going to go to Disneyland and I'm going to go every day for a month, which is fascinating, and write about it. So where does this come from?
Well, it really came from inside my head. It really was I heard a little voice say, go to Disneyland every day and write.
And you're how old when you say this to yourself?
It was in 2008. I was 39, about to turn 40. I was in a kind of a between gigs. I had just directed a production of Grease at Stage Door Manor, which is a camp in upstate New York. I was returning back to Radio City, but I had this it was the end of August, and then I was leaving to go back to New York in mid-October, and I didn't really want to get started in LA. And I was always a Disney fan growing up, and I talk about in the book.
But you'd never been.
I'd never been to Disneyland. Disney World was always where my family went.
Two different animals.
Yeah, totally, which I really didn't get that until I went. But it really was, I just had this urging to go and write, and I always wanted to just make it a book, and people were always like, oh, you should blog, it should be a this, and but I always just felt, to me, it wanted to be a book, because I like reading diary stuff, I like reading short subjects.
And something to hold that's tangible.
Yeah, and
So you start out and you get a premium annual ticket.
Yes.
I had never heard of that.
Yeah.
What is a premium annual ticket, and how much does this cost?
Well, they cost a lot more now. I think I paid then, I think it was $329, which really, when you break it down, I went 30 days in a row.
Right.
I mean, it included parking. It was the maximum one.
Awesome.
No blackout dates, and you get parking, and I think 10% off of, sometimes 15% off of food, gifts, whatever.
And how is it that you have a month off? I mean, I wish I had 4 weeks in a row to take off to do this. So just in between gigs.
I had just worked 9 weeks with kids, teaching them all day and directing them in shows. I mean, it's a crazy process. We put up full-length musicals in 2 weeks' time, 3 times throughout the summer. And then I don't know, it's kind of my time off, because then when you go to work at Radio City, once you start, you don't have a day off.
Sure.
And it's, I mean, some days you do 5 shows a day, and it's exhausting. So you kind of, I don't know, I give myself this chunk of time
Okay, so you've got a book in hand.
Yes.
It's a Mickey Mouse.
I bought
Okay.
it that first day.
Right,
yeah.
and yet the shirt, we should say
Yes,
Disneyland
this is
with,
a vintage.
with Donald
I think
Duck.
this is from '77, but
That's worth some money. You should
It's
get that on
another
eBay.
obsession of mine is the vintage T-shirts.
So here we go. So every day you drive up to the gates.
Yeah.
And you go and you ride and you ride and ride the rides
And
you
eat, yeah.
eat everything. And as a storyteller that I am, you do something, you're observing and you're listening and you're writing.
Mm-hmm.
So give me a day in the life at Disneyland that is in this book that you enjoyed.
Oh, that I enjoyed? Well,
Because there was some little quirky stuff that happened.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's not that I never enjoyed it, but it made me. I mean, I think I'm very passionate about Disney. I think I have so many great child, hood memories, and maybe I'm protective of those. So, most of the enjoyable things I think were hearing comments of children.
Like what? Like what did they
Oh,
say?
The first day I talk about I'm there standing in line, and I've already tried to adapt this attitude that because I'm there for 30 days, I don't have to hurry and I can just kind of chill out.
Which is what we mostly do. We
Yeah.
have the kids, we go,
you're always,
running.
you don't get to just kind of be. And that was one of my goals, was just to be in Disneyland and just kind of like soak it all in and see if, this could like calm me down and bring that magical feeling back that I always had as a kid.
So what did we hear?
Just one big question was is that real? As a kid, you go, and because there's so many things that aren't real in the park. So when you saw like ducks or horses that are the real animals, kids wondering, were those real? And asking their parents, is that real? And kind of playing the guessing game. And I remember I used to do that as a kid, and I didn't want anything to be real. I wanted everything to be a fake, made up thing. So that was always great for me. But of course, the Fantasyland rides, come on, all the attractions.
What's not to like,
What's
right?
not to like?
Well, there are people who love Disney and others who
Yeah.
are not so crazy about Disney. You're a lover. Now, let me ask you, lines. You went in September, I think, is that correct? The lines drive people crazy. Did they drive you crazy after 30 days in a row?
No, because I just, I didn't have that, I have to get on this today. I mean, if there was a line, I would bypass it. I became really good. Like, if anybody needs a tour guide to Disneyland, I'm available to take them, because I think you have to know what you want to go on, but I think it's doable. You just have to know that if there's a line for pirates, don't wait right then, because you can come back later and there
Or
won't be a
go
line.
counterclockwise.
Yeah.
I've read books on that. Don't go the way everybody is going. What are the takeaways of going to Disneyland every day? Did you get sick and tired of it? Do you still love it as much as you liked Disney World? What are we to take from this book after 30 days in the park?
Well, I think what I learned was I kind of do a scientific tie-up in the end almost, that I decided it was the happiest place on earth. Just because everybody's there, for whatever reason, kind of vibrating at a higher frequency of happiness. And, whatever it is for them, Donald Duck, a certain ride, a certain childhood feeling. And Walt really talked about that there was this spot inside everybody.
And I'm going to put Walt up while you're
Yes.
talking about him.
That there was this unspoiled spot free of prejudice and hate that all lived within us. And that's what he was hoping to capture in the park. And I really feel that he did in a lot of ways capture that. So that was the feeling that I wanted to try to isolate and discover a little bit more and learn how to take that with me. Because as a kid, I also talk about in the book having these recurring dreams where I would
Nightmares, actually.
pretty much nightmares, where we were going to the park and it would close or we couldn't find the entrance, and I would just wake up miserable wanting to go to Disney. And every time we went on a family vacation, I loved it and I never wanted to leave. I mean,
I want to live in your world.
Having grown up a little bit, I was glad not to have to go back on the 31st day, probably,
Takes a little time off anyway.
There were days, certainly, when it was challenging and when it was hot, when it was super crowded, and I started the early September that year. It's kind of in 2008, when the economy was going wacky. That was a real time for that, and I feel like I was given this gift because that first week that I was there, it was practically empty. And things were closed down for renovation. Small World was closed, the Haunted Mansion was closed, and like stuff was going on. They were really like, you know, beautifying or whatever they call it to the park. And so I got used to this kind of empty Disneyland. And then as the month progressed, it would get more crowded and crowded. And I did kind of start to feel like, you know, it was my backyard.
So you gave yourself a gift. Can you see yourself doing this again at Disney World, or have you done it now?
I don't know if I would do the same thing. I've already thought about, I mean, I have thought about, yeah, the book that I would hit all the parks in Disney World in a similar way. I don't know. We'll see if people, you know, take to this and like my style of how I see things.
And you ran into somebody who, I think in the book, was a 16-year-old that said, oh yeah, I did that.
Oh, I did that before. Yeah, I was.
Now see, I thought this was so novel that you would say, and really kind of fun as an observer, to do 30 days, and the 16-year-old said to you, oh yeah, I've already done that.
Yeah, well, people did. When it first went in, you know, the kind of the first editorial evaluation, they were like, who is this man? Who is this 40-year-old man that can go to Disneyland every day for 30 days? So I really had to like write, you know, I didn't really, it was very raw when I first had it, because like I said, it was handwritten in a book. I didn't have an introduction. There was no table of contents. It was just like this, you know, raw diary that I had.
And you self-published it.
Self-published it, yeah. Which at first, you know, I just had decided, being an actor for so many years in New York, a musical theater actor, I already get rejected so often.
It's a way of
all
life
the time.
as an actor, right?
I thought, I don't want to be rejected on 2 levels. So I self-published, which was a completely new experience to me, which, you know, I guess from what I hear, the publishing world is changing, and it's kind of akin to, you know, doing an indie film now, and you hope a bigger distributor will pick it up and, you know, distribute it to the masses. So we'll see.
Well, Matt, it's great fun. I loved reading it.
Great.
And let's see if the great masses find this and all the Disney fans. It's a great book, 30 Days in the Kingdom. Matt, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Anne.
Good luck.
All right.